All right, Dave, we're going. How you doing, bud?
Good. How's it going?
Doing good. Um, Excited to have you on. Excited to talk and learn a bit more about what you're doing. Um, because you know, I think being myself, I'm 31 years old, so never got to experience the Automat, but have lived it through the documentaries and the photos and all that kind of stuff. And I imagine you're the same. You don't look too long in
No,
the
I'm
tooth,
just
I guess.
no. No, just slightly older. A couple more
Yeah.
years.
Okay, yeah. So you never got to go because the last one closed shop in what 1991 or something.
Yep. Yeah, New York City.
New York City,
I
yeah,
never got to personally go to one.
right. Yeah, man, bummer. But maybe we will get the chance now, huh?
That's my hope.
That's the plan. Okay. Well, let's just start in. I mean, people listening might not even know what the heck an automat is, or have never heard of Horn and Hardart. I've been excited for this, so I've been kind of sharing it with everybody, and I'll kind of throw it out, like, especially kind of the older, like the boomer folks in my family and stuff. They'll be like, no, I don't think I remember that. But then once I explain the whole thing to them, they're like, oh yeah, I remember that. That's pretty cool. So, yeah, let's just get into it. Can you give us a little, I guess, just like, what is it? What's an automat?
Sure. Well, specifically too, I'll tell you what a Horn and Hardart automat is.
Okay.
Horn and Hardart was really kind of the automat, so the two are pretty linked. Horn and Hardart was a restaurant chain that started in Philadelphia in 1888. They had a small lunchroom in Center City, Philadelphia. And it was very, very tiny, but they became very popular because of the style of coffee they served. Most of the coffee at the time was boiled. You would just throw coffee grounds into water and boil it and scoop the grounds off the top, and that was your coffee. But Frank Hardart, who had moved to Philadelphia from New Orleans, brought with him a drip style of coffee. So, like a French drip coffee. When he teamed up with Joseph Horn, they started Horn and Hardart, and the coffee really propelled their small little lunchroom into popularity in Philadelphia. So they opened up a couple of locations, and then in 1902, that's when they opened up the first automat. They got the machines from Germany, which they had started to pop up in Germany around the late 1800s. So very popular at the World's Fair, things like that. So 1890s, you started to see sort of these automatic restaurants start to pop up. And even today, I see a lot of beer walls. They had beer walls back then, so
Oh,
it was a
cool.
very, it was an automated way to get your food and drinks and things like that. So they brought that over here and they opened up the first automat in Philadelphia in 1902. And from there, it became popular and took off. The first one in New York City opened in 1912 in Times Square, and that was really their flagship location in New York City. Absolutely beautiful. And at their height, by sort of the mid-century, 1950s, 1960s, they had about 150 locations in total. About 80 of those were automats. So the
Okay.
automats were basically self-service, waiterless restaurants. You would walk in, and there would be a wall of tiny little windows. I have one behind me here. And you would walk up, and you could view the food that was in there, drop a couple nickels or a nickel into the machines. The window would open, and you could get your food out. And these were volume based establishments. So the food only sat in those little windows for about 3 minutes before somebody would take the item out. And they had
Wow.
hot food, cold food. You could get ice cream out of these. And it's not that they weren't even cooled at the time, but they would put ice cream in these and pies, and
Wow.
they would
Just
go
ice
very
cream
quickly.
sitting in like a bowl to grab.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so
That is high
they
volume.
were incredibly popular. About a half a million people ate there a day in New York City, and in Philadelphia, I think some of the numbers I've seen were about 10% of the city ate at Horn and Hardarts. These were very, very popular, very good eating establishments that served sort of home style. I guess maybe today we'd say comfort food, baked beans, mac and cheese. They even had some very popular meat pies, things like that at the time. So very, you know, good healthy at the time, consistent food.
Yeah, like real food, not just like 7-Eleven weird pizza or hot
Right.
dogs or whatever. So they launched off of their coffee. That was kind of the first thing that kind of got their restaurant rolling or got them popular, I guess.
Yeah, and the coffee remained very popular. It started out being 5 cents, so you would go in and drop your nickel into these really ornate dolphin spouts with a lever on it, and the
Yes.
coffee would come out of the mouth of these dolphin spouts that were modeled after sort of the Italian fountains that you might see in Florence. So it was very popular, but it was also they had this 5 cent cup of coffee that was widely known, and they sold about 90 million cups of coffee a year. Now they did eventually increase that price to 10 cents somewhere in the mid-century, and that number got cut in half. But they remained very well known and widely popular for the coffee.
Yeah. Yeah, that was kind of a big deal because their machines could only take nickels, right? So they had to, their only option was to keep it at 5 cents or literally double the price, which is like crazy. Like places don't double the price of their food overnight, you know?
Right. These were mechanical machines that all worked based on how big the coin was that you were putting in there. And at the time, they weren't able to be made for pennies. So they had to go from 5 cents to 2 nickels to be 10 cents,
Mm-hmm.
um, which was a limit. Eventually, the machines were changed to be able to take quarters. So later on, once it got to a point where they didn't want people putting in 10 different nickels, the machines were converted to be able to take quarters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so you touched on it a little bit. You talked about how they had like a this ornate dolphin head that would spit out the coffee, which is just cool. Like, is that kind of what I guess when they brought over the automatic stuff from Germany and started doing that was did they already have like kind of a good following around like their food and coffee and the quality and the price and stuff, or was it kind of that automated factor and just the element that like we're making this really cool and your coffee's going to come out of a dolphin head? Is that kind of what got them popular? Do you know?
That's a good question. I think they were popular in Philadelphia, so for them to open a new location, people trusted the food already. I think they trusted the business already enough to at least go there and try it. They did get a lot of press. This was a very new thing that was happening, so they did get a lot of attention even before the location was open. This was at a time when mechanical machines like this were so fascinating to people. The Industrial Revolution, people had sort of this um, love of the future, but that future was mechanical, and so I think this was the machines were also very different than even the ones that opened up in Times Square in 1912. So the first generation that came over from Germany, they were not quite as efficient as they later became. So I don't want to say there was all for show, but there was an element where these original machines, it was an experience to use them, and not necessarily based on pure convenience or which is what they did become. Once they brought on an engineer, John Fritchie was his name, and he redesigned the machines. A lot of these machines actually became unique and patented for Horn and Hardart, and that sort of ease of use, convenience started to come then, which is what really made them popular. So I think to sort of a long-winded answer for your question, they did have a following in Philadelphia. They had this sort of new, very novel thing that people wanted to experience, and the food was very good. And from there, they were able to kind of lay a foundation that they could develop the machines, develop the locations either. So the machines got better, the locations got more beautiful, more ornate. And the dolphin spout in particular, that was something that Joseph Horn saw the dolphin. He took a trip to Italy, saw the dolphin fountains there, and then decided to bring it back and create his own dolphin spout. So it was just sort of gives a window into these two founders that had this real uncompromising quality in their minds of what their restaurants would be. They were beautifully tiled. They had marble. They had these ornate dolphin spouts. The Automat machines were very beautiful machines covered in glass and brass. So there was this real devotion to quality food and also quality in the spaces that you were in and the things that you touched and the seats that you sat in and the tables you were at. So it was a real, from start to finish, it was a real wonderful experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the novelty, like you said, definitely brought people in, piqued their interest. I'm sure it was great for marketing and word of mouth and everything, but then they were able to really back it up with some like people came in, they're like, wow, this food's actually pretty great and it's a good price. So they kept coming back. It wasn't just an in and out situation because of that, I'm sure. But let's, so, you know, it's called the Automat. Is it called the Automat? Is that just short for automatic, I guess? Is that the reason?
Yeah, and there still are automats in the world. So I early last year, we're in 2025 now. So early last year, went to Amsterdam. There's a lot of automats still in Amsterdam and a couple of places in Europe. One just opened in Bordeaux. There's another in Germany that I just saw. So it is a concept that has remained in the world and is still out there, and that I believe, and why I'm doing this, I believe that over the next 5 years, it's going to kind of start to pick back up into everybody's vocabulary because there is a lot of interest on the business side from reintroducing this dining concept again.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Okay. And I want to get into that and where it's coming back and everything. But real quick, I just want to touch on because it's called an automat, it's automatic. There's these machines. Is vending machines the right word, I guess? Or is it different?
I don't want to call them vending machines, but yeah, that's what they're. It's a machine that's vending you food. So
That's true.
the
Yeah.
big difference is that, and especially in Horn and Hardart's case, is that the food is fresh.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not putting in food that is pre-made or pre-packaged. The food that's going in these is fresh, and the technology we have today makes it so that they can be heated or cooled. So the food that goes in there can stay cold or it can stay warm. So
Mm-hmm.
not that it's going to be sitting in there for an hour, but it does allow it to sit in there for a short period of time and stay warm or cold.
Yeah. And I think the thing for people listening is like there's a full kitchen behind there where everything's being made fresh and they're basically filling up those drums and rotating them and then filling the windows with food, correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, cuz I don't know at least for me I was like, oh yeah, like of course. But you know, when you hear automat and it's automatic, I'm like, well, there must be a team of robots back there making up that food for everybody. But I mean, that's what you
So
want, really, is like some experts back there making really good food.
right, you're not the only one. We recently did a video on our social media that explained that very concept. The video started out and said, were there people behind the machines? And it's, I think, our most viewed video. It was our most successful video on social media as far as comments and shares and people viewing it. So, and of course, a couple of the comments were like, well, of course there's people back there. How else did they make the food? But I think for a lot of people, they just don't really think about it because all you see is these little windows with food in. And then as soon as you take your food out, more food magically appears and you don't really think about what's going on behind the scenes. But there was a team of people behind the scenes making the food, putting it in. In Horn and Hardart's case, they had central commissaries where they would make all this food fresh. And then each automat would get 4 to 5 deliveries a day of food, where a lot of it was made at the central commissary and then finished in the automats themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, so I think we've really gotten across like just how great the food was. It was a good price. It was really cool to go there. It was novel. It was beautiful inside. They were like Art Deco style, all the tiling, the dolphin spout, everything. So what happened? What happened to Horn and Hardart? What was the demise of them?
Well, so they started to kind of lose steam. They were very, very successful throughout the 1950s, 60s. 70s, you could probably start to see a decline, and the 80s was very bad for them. And then the last one closed in 91. You could point to a number of things. Shifting consumers, the younger generation didn't want to serve themselves. They actually wanted to have a waiter or waitress. People were moving out of cities, so that volume that they had and had established was very hard to replace. These were very big too. They were 10,000 square feet plus. So these were very large restaurants. And when less people were in the city for dinner time or on the weekends, they really suffered. And these large commissaries that were cranking out a ton of food were just not being utilized at 100%. So what I think from a business standpoint is that the company also sort of around that time was losing or sort of forgetting the things that made them successful in the first place. And I think that just happens to companies a lot. And we talked about our age in the beginning of this. I feel like my whole life I've watched great 100-year-old American companies just sort of crumble and disappear. I used to work at Sears back when I was a teenager, and that is another one that's like, oh my gosh, how did no one see that coming at this company? And I think it's very hard for companies to scale back. Companies are very good at growing, but they're not very good at shrinking. And after a certain amount of time, it's very hard to remember what you were doing and why you were doing it. And so I think that there were some external factors, but internal as well. My hope is to focus on what made Horn Hardart great to begin with. Focusing on quality, focusing on the details, creating a company without the bottom line in mind, but with creating a great product at the forefront of what you're doing every day and trying to sort of weave that into everything you do. And that's really what Horn Hardart did. I mean, Joseph Horn and Frank Hardart were sort of masters at that. So I think that the opportunity with this company is very special, that if we can bring that back and sort of bring that magic back, it's going to be really great.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds awesome. I would love to live near one of these, and just go there every day for lunch, for dinner, whatever, just pick up some great food, easy. And so it feels like it would fit in perfectly with at least what I want, what people want today. You talked about, maybe people in the 60s or 70s wanting a waiter. I don't care about a waiter. I just want to pick up something quick and good and get going. So, I guess, have you seen, how is this going to fit into, or however you want to take it, I guess, if you want to jump back a little bit about what you're doing or where you're going, but how you kind of see this fitting into, the modern world, I guess, where we don't carry around a pocket full of nickels.
Right. So I first I had actually met one of the entrepreneurs, a couple of them from Philadelphia, while the company was going through bankruptcy. They purchased the company out of bankruptcy, and they had recreated some of the food that got sold in grocery stores. They had a lot of iterations on trying to bring the company back, but they did not have plans for an Automat. And so from 1991 till now, the company really was not, I think, what people remember, and it just, it wasn't a great representation, I think, of what the brand could make. So I had met one of those entrepreneurs, it was probably around 2016 or 17 or so, and at the time they were getting the coffee started again and selling the coffee, and I thought it was really cool. So I had never heard of the brand before then, but just sort of fell in love with the idea and kept in touch with the guy. Flash forward to 2022, I had left my last company and was looking for something new to do in the next venture, and so I called him up and said, hey, I want to open an Automat, and started that conversation with him there. So this was 2022. It was very much in my mind that we were still all thinking, the pandemic was still very fresh in our minds. Mm-hmm. Everyone was still focused on contactless service, that sort of thing. And so that's where I went with this. As we sort of developed the the idea, and as I sort of convinced, his name is Al, as I sort of convinced Al to let me sort of take over and put forward my vision, it became much larger. And the focus actually is not really on, hey, let's have contactless delivery because of the pandemic, which is where I think a lot of the food locker and which is where a lot of the food locker things you see today are. This to me is really about an experience and bringing just a very unique experience to restaurants. So the way that I thought we could do this, we are a startup. We have very limited funds. I put in my own money to sort of get this started when I took over in 2022. The company was really not selling much coffee anymore. It was not really doing very well. The e-commerce presence was kind of at its low point because they didn't do so well through the pandemic. So we relaunched our e-commerce website in March of 2023, introduced the coffee again, and started to kind of build back the company from there. We had a great year last year, so 2024 was really, really promising for us. A lot of really hard work to sort of grind through the initial stages to get some traction, and we started off and had a great month in January too. So all that's sort of laying the foundation for a successful company that's profitable, that can grow and be sustainable, and is here for the long run. My hope is that I'm a tiny little blip on the radar that you don't even remember because this company's set up for another 100 years. So when we're looking at now going into retail, my hope is that we have a solid foundation with the coffee and some of the other products we brought back, and then we can sort of introduce this dining concept once more. So I think I answered your question somewhere in there, but I probably didn't very well. That was, again, sort of a long-winded how we are today.
Yeah. No, it's great. So yeah, I saw the coffee. Right. No, so I saw the coffee on the website, and yeah, that's awesome. Are you guys also selling, you have some merch on there. Are you guys doing other products in grocery stores and stuff like that you kind of mentioned, or is that not really happening anymore?
Not in grocery stores. We do have a couple of products this year. The thing we get asked about all the time is the food. That is sort of waiting for a retail location. So where I see this fitting is definitely during breakfast, we have a really, really great coffee brand. And I think that the sort of convenience that the Automat offers on the current generation of machines that are available and the technology that we have, the breakfast is a very, very great adaptation for this concept. So being able to come in, tap your credit card, get your food, it's hot, tap your credit card, get some coffee, and leave, and not have to worry about lines or tipping or a cashier. It's really, really a great concept. That's what the Automat machines really do. They're not removing employees. They're not. I get asked all the time, like, are we going to have robots making the food, or stuff like that? And that's not really what this is about. What we're really doing is we're eliminating a person from just sitting at a register all day, just saying hi, next, thank you. So instead of having one cashier, we've got, a bank of windows that has a payment processor. We could have 10 payment processors, and similar to the coffee. So there's no lines, no tipping, no waiting. It's just a very convenient way to get your food. And on top of that, it's a very tactile experience, which I also think is sort of missing from our restaurant experience today. It's a very, very cool experience to be able to go into a restaurant and do something other than tap on a computer screen. So breakfast is a great option. Lunch, this also obviously has a great lunch component. And I see a lot of the original recipes that people are excited about coming through in lunch and possibly a dinner format. So that mac and cheese that everybody emails us about and says we want this mac and cheese back. Some of those things, some of the pies, some of those things are going to come through in more of a lunch menu and a dinner menu. Our initial focus is going to be on a breakfast and lunch I don't know how late we would stay open for a real heavy dinner presence, but the focus would be on a midday automat.
Hmm.
We're the menu that we have, the concept menu that we have has about 50% of the items are original recipes from original Horn
Wow.
Hardart.
So
So
you have those recipes that you can pull from.
yeah, yeah, and a lot of them work today. Some of the old ones I don't think, but there's a lot of soups. There's a lot of again mac and cheese. A lot of stews, things like that. They were very famous for their pies.
Hmm.
Um, but we have a coffee cake recipe, from an original coffee cake recipe. So you're going to see a lot of that kind of stuff come through.
Yeah. Dang, man, that's gonna be so fun to visit, and yeah, to get to try those again that that Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner got to try. That's gonna be pretty fun. Um,
Yes.
so do yeah, like I could see how the vision is, the retail locations and stuff like that. Are you hoping or thinking that they're going to be kind of this, like, an homage or similar to what they were in the early 1900s, where they're it's a big store and it's all, it's very ornate? Or are you looking at kind of maybe a shared space with an existing place, or do you have anything that you can kind of tell us about that, of where you're leaning?
So we're looking at smaller automats. So probably 1,500 to 2,000 square feet. So not your
Hmm.
8 to 10,000 square feet, but in those will be. I'm open to shared spaces as well. So if there is a good location for I'm open to putting them anywhere that sort of represents a brand. But ideally, we're looking at a standalone location. These lend themselves obviously to walking traffic.
Yep.
So we're not expecting drive-throughs at these locations. So probably more cities or walkable locations, things like that. But slightly smaller. Still, will have seating, obviously. And probably in a 1920s sort of modernized Art Deco theme. We want to be true again to what the company really was about in the beginning and what made them successful.
Hmm.
Um, part of the reason again why they didn't work, and I'm remembering in the 1960s they had a consultant do a very thorough job of sort of state of their business and what challenges they were going to face over the next 10 years. And one of them was just their aging buildings and locations, which they were not investing in at the time. So these beautiful Art Deco buildings that, when you watch the documentary and you see Mel Brooks and Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Colin Powell, the people that were in that documentary, all of them talked about how beautiful the spaces were. But by the 1960s and 70s, the spaces were very run down. They were not updated. And so they weren't fun to go to anymore. Um, we're going to try and go back to that original, really beautiful, Art Deco, fun sort of clean environment.
Yeah. Oh, heck yeah. That's so cool. And now, are you thinking of having this be, because I know the original ones had seating, and you could basically hang out there as long as you wanted, and that, I think that eventually kind of became an issue with people maybe hanging around who they didn't really want in that store, and families started to feel uncomfortable going in. Are you, with a smaller location, are you thinking of having some seating, or is it more kind of grab and go?
Yeah, I think we will have seating in the smaller locations. That's an issue for all restaurants. I think right now, well, I think a lot of coffee focused restaurants.
Oh yeah.
Um, so Horn and Hardart was notorious for their, yeah, you could sit there for as long as you want, no one's going to bother you. Um, I'm sure there's a happy medium somewhere of allowing people to have an adequate amount of time in your restaurants, but that is obviously an issue that yeah, if you've got 2,000 square feet, you're going to be more concerned about turning over those tables for new people coming in that want to sit there. But I think everybody deals with that now. So unless you have 10,000 square feet, you'll be concerned about that. But we'll have some seating, and then a decent amount will be grab and go too.
Yeah. Man, well, it sounds so cool. It really is, it sounds like it's going to be like it was. Like the only difference that we're kind of looking at is that instead of dropping in nickels, we'll be tapping a credit card, kind of, right?
I hope so. My hope is that the generation that remembers it, they were all there as kids, and if you're in your 60s now or 70s, you were there as a child most likely, and
Yeah.
those are big shoes to fill, because the imagination of a child when they walked in there, these automats were magical to kids, and so my hope is that if you remember the automat, you can walk in and you feel that it's just as magical as it was when you were a kid, which again is very hard to do. But also if you're in the younger generation like us and you walk in, it's something that is very pleasant and trendy and nice, and that a place that you want to keep coming back to. So I do think they're luckily vintage is cool among our generation, and I think younger generations are looking for stuff that is sort of a bygone era. So luckily, creating a space that appeals to everybody, I think, is easier today than it maybe even was 20 years ago. So the design of the locations, I think, is it's doable to sort of bring that nostalgia and the charm back in a modern way.
Mm-hmm. And then, so are you looking at New York for the first one at least, or to kind of grow there?
So I am local to Philadelphia,
Okay.
and I've been in Philly. I grew up outside of Philadelphia and then lived in Philly, and so I'm sort of a Philadelphian. I'm probably going to be here for the first location. New York is a huge market for us, but it may be a little while until the first one opens there. Um, we're going to be focused on the coffee is getting roasted here in Philly, and sort of our operations are here in Philly. So
Mm-hmm.
that's most likely where the first one is going to be.
Okay.
My goal is that, and I do really believe that Horn and Hardart could do this. My goal is that this is back to being one of the largest restaurant chains in the country. At the time, they were the largest.
Wow.
So I know you're on the West Coast, so I hope that there's Horn and Hardarts on the West Coast eventually as well.
Wow.
Whether
Okay.
I'm going to be the one putting them there or not, I don't know, but I don't know how long that's going to take. But those are sort of my dreams. So right now, I'm just focused on the first sort of 1 to 3 locations and getting those under our belt. Those are probably going to be local to Philly, and from there, the expansion plan can look very different, and I'll cross that bridge when we get there. But we are shipping our coffee to all 50 states right now, so
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Hawaii and Alaska included. So, in fact, in California is one of our larger markets that we ship coffee to. I think a lot of East Coast transplants sort of down into Florida, Texas, and California. Those are our next biggest places that we ship coffee to outside of the Northeast.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, yeah. So did Horn and Hardart ever have any locations in LA or outside of New York and Philly?
They had some in Baltimore, Chicago at some point, but they were really it was a New York and Philadelphia thing. So
Mm-hmm.
the Philadelphia, what ended up happening was when the founders died, they actually split the two entities into separate companies. So there was actually like a Philadelphia Horn and Hardart, and the New York Horn and Hardart was a separate company, although
Oh,
they
okay.
operated together. And so neither really wanted to expand. They had these huge commissaries and these truck routes that were going around that, for those to expand any further, they really didn't, they didn't want to. So, and they had enough volume at the time that they were happy
Mm-hmm.
doing. But yeah, the couple in Baltimore and like Chicago. Um,
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if you put much thought into this, but do you see it like because it seems like it kind of revolves or it works very well for, um, a place like New York where people are walking, they walk by it on their, commute to the subway or whatever, um,
mhm.
do you like how do you envision the same type of thing working in LA where it's more of a car culture type of thing?
Well, wherever it is, we're going to be focused on, like you said, the walkable areas. If there is a location that has a drive-through, it wouldn't be through Automat windows, right? And then we're getting away from the Automat, which is
Yeah.
kind of the whole point of the concept. And so um, it's also a very crowded, suburban markets are very crowded with fast casual restaurant concepts these days as well, focused on drive-through sort of commuter traffic. So
Yeah.
at least for right now, my focus is on cities or areas that have a lot of walking traffic where there's a lot of commuters, but there's a large lunchtime crowd maybe. In cities like New York and Philly, obviously there's a significant amount of tourism. So these are uniquely linked to those cities, and I think would do very well with tourists visiting those cities since they sort of originated there.
Yeah.
At one point, that's kind of how it was in New York. That if you were visiting New York, you went to an Automat. Not
Yeah.
even if you were hungry, that's what you had to do. It was
Yep.
part of the New York experience. And so, in the short term, bringing that back to those cities is one of our focuses. So areas that have large tourism, commuter traffic, and also some work traffic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Yeah, now that we're kind of, or I just got me thinking too. My wife and I love to get. There's a place around us called Every Table, and they just have like they started off as meal delivery, but then they started opening up retail locations where um, you just kind of pop in. They have food that's it's not ready to go, but they'll heat it up for you, or you can take it home. And we just started using that more and more and more. We just love. We've got those kind of plotted along our commutes on the way home. We'll stop and just pick up dinner for ourselves, but not quite the romance of a Horn and Hardart, but a similar concept where
Well,
it's just
Horn Hardart sort of pioneered that concept. So they had, I mentioned they had 150 or so locations. About 80 of them were automats, but the rest were these retail shops. And they were not automats. They were, they would take the food from their commissaries that were making all this stuff, package it up, and sell it in their retail shops. So they had pre-made dinners, and they had a slogan which I think if you understand the the reasoning behind it at the time makes a lot of sense. But the slogan was "less work for mother" for these retail shops. So
okay.
the thought was that you would swing by, grab your dinner for that evening, and you would get a whole dinner for your family that you could heat up at home, and that was that. So those retail shops had that same kind of thing, and so when I think about this brand too, there is a lot of opportunity outside of just the automats to bring back some of these things that do very well today and that Horn and Hardart did 60 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's one of them. Yeah, pre-made, pre-packaged, or food that you can take home and heat up for your dinner. I have two kids, and dinners are very difficult. So I love the concept of having dinner already made for you and ready.
Yeah, it's so great. It just makes life so easy, especially when you can kind of rely on it to always be there, and it's always going to taste pretty good, and it's a decent price. It's such a help.
Yep. Yeah, and there's a lot of obviously mail order ones today that I've tried, and um, there's a lot of companies trying to do it, but I think there's still a big opportunity, at least
Mm-hmm.
for me.
So I wanted to give you my idea pitch that I had for your coffee for to add on as an add on to the coffee that you're selling is it would be so fun. This isn't I don't know if this is even possible or whatever, but it would be so fun to have like a special edition Keurig machine or attachment or something where you can pop in your your K cup in there and then have it come out of a dolphin head, like a 3D printed, brass dolphin head or something, and have that at home. I just think that would be so fun.
I would love that. I've thought about someday I'll link up with a manufacturer that can make our own patented coffee dispenser for your home and have it come out of a dolphin spout
Right. It's just so
someday. Or we'll
ridiculous.
just 3D print one that you can with some adhesive on the back you can stick on and
Yeah, just pop it on. Yeah.
pop it onto your Keurig machine.
Yeah, I love it. I just love that he had that. He saw a fountain in Italy and just said, "Yeah, that'd be pretty cool to spit some coffee out of." So, and he just did it. Like that's just
I know what an age they lived in, right? I mean, that was That's what I think we're missing out in today. Like people just used to do wild things like that, and it wasn't even particularly attractive. Like the dolphin on it is like has like teeth, and dolphins were not. It was based off like a Roman dolphin, which I think the Romans thought dolphins were like sharks. Like they were depicted as like these fearsome creatures,
mhm.
and that's what the dolphin kind of looks like. It's like a very ornate, like sort of fearsome looking dolphin. And some people have said like it doesn't even look like a dolphin. Um, it looks more like like a kind of a shark or something. But it's just so cool, and someday that is again, we're a startup with limited resources, but coming up with a modern way to do coffee out of a dolphin spout is a priority for me. So
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that I'll get it during the first generation of automats that we can put out there. So we'll see. It's I have to make compromises, but that's one I'm holding on to.
Yeah, I love that. That's a priority. Man, well, it's so fun. Dave, I'm just so glad that you have caught on to this and you're spearheading this and bringing it back for all of us. I'm gonna be traveling and visiting for sure. Can't wait to go check out one of these places. Is there like people listening? Where can we kind of send them to keep up on the company and your story and where you guys are at with everything?
Yeah, so you can go to hornandhardart.com, or if you just type in the Automat, Horn and Hardart into Google, I'm sure we'll be right there. Um, our coffee right now is really sort of fueling the success of the brand. So I always appreciate new coffee customers. We've got two really good blends. The medium roast that we have is sort of the original. It's a recreation of the original roast that was served in the automats. So if you want to know what that coffee was like, you'll look for the historic automat blend or a medium roast. And we have a really nice dark roast as well. This year, we're introducing a decaf because people really want a decaf. So you'll be able to get that automat blend in a decaf as well. And we've got some new, we have coffee pods coming out we have coffee pods currently, but we're coming out with some new coffee pods as well this year. So we've got a lot of really cool stuff going on that you can check out. So you can also follow along, sign up for our email updates. We send out some newsletters, things like that. And this year might be doing sort of like an automat club too that you can sort of join and get updates from me and things like that. So
Awesome. Very cool. Well, yeah, appreciate you coming on. Absolutely love hearing the story. It's so fun and yeah, very excited to see where you guys go.
thanks so much. I really appreciate it. And great talking to you.